Welcome to the Jira Life, the place to find news, events, and interviews with the Atlassian Community's movers and shakers. Join our hosts, Alex, Dr. Jira Ortiz, and Rodney, the Jira guy Nissen, as well as the Jira amigos in the Peanut Gallery, as we sit down and discuss the latest going on in the Atlassian ecosystem. Because we didn't choose the Jira Life, the Jira Life chose us.
Hello, hello.
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 Alex, are you excited yet?
I'm always very excited, but yes, team. Wait, are you asking me if we're excited for what's happening in a couple weeks, or because we have such an amazing guest with us, or what are we talking about here? Yes to all of it?
Yes to all of it.
I'm very excited. Philip, how about you? How do you feel? Have you ever been on a Atlassian-related podcast?
Podcast, I suppose not. I've done some, I suppose, pre-recorded stuff, but there's always a first for everything. So I'm doing great. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm excited.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that I got to meet you briefly.
Yeah.
2 months ago now.
Oh, wow. Was it 2? I would have said 1. So there you go.
Yeah, no, last week of February or February 20th.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That's right.
Yeah, time makes fools of us all.
Absolutely.
Some more than others.
Oh, me all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm in good company. That's for sure.
Are you ready for team though? Are you going to be there?
I'm going to be there. Going to be there in full force. Atlassian Ventures has a booth. Happy to go into that in a little bit later, but we're featuring 30 different of our portfolio companies who will all take turns doing shifts at the booth. So this is the third year in a row we're doing it, and it's seemingly gotten bigger and better every year. So I'm super excited.
So 30 portfolio companies means 30 opportunities for 30 different types of swag?
Well, as long as the swag is within the confines of what they're allowed to bring, I suppose it does mean that. Yes, it does.
So hover, you heard it here first. Hover around the Atlassian Ventures. Let the swag
you'll have to know the shift change times. You don't want to be there the whole conference, or else you're just kind of, you'll be picking up the same stuff.
The swag comes to you as opposed to you having to go hunt for it.
That's right. That's right.
Sean does not like
importantly, Alex, I think they have some other things they need to attend while they're there. I mean, you have a session. I have a few sessions. You actually have 2 sessions.
I have a couple. You have more than me, though.
And one of them doesn't count. It's before team technically starts.
I got invited and, I guess, uninvited to that. Or forgotten.
Well, I'm re-inviting you.
I was going to say, good thing you know the speaker.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be there though. I don't know if it starts at 7 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. now though, but I'm going to be there.
It's a time.
Yep.
I'm not on until closer to noon anyway, so you could show up late. I won't care.
And I haven't looked at a single session outside of the ones I'm doing. But Philip, are you going to be in any yourself?
My goal is to bounce around, but no. I say this just to be honest, not to be self-deprecating. For probably the 8th year in a row, my submission was rejected. So I have that consistent.
We shouldn't feel bad then, because
I'm very consistent in that regard. So you know what to expect.
Well, so first of all, before we even get down too far, let's introduce you.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
We're like 4 minutes into this. We don't even know who Philip is. So Philip, why don't you take a couple minutes here and tell us who you are, what you do?
Sure.
Why do you got that Atlassian Ventures sign on there?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, first off, before I even do that, I really just want to say thank you for having me. This is really fun. I've been excited about this since we kind of put it on the calendar, maybe,
3 months ago?
3-4 months ago. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I've definitely had it circled for a while. But hey, everybody, my name is Philip Braddock. I am the portfolio management lead for Atlassian Ventures, which is Atlassian's corporate venture fund. And I'm sure we'll go into more detail about that, but just sticking with introduction. Based in San Francisco, I've been working at Atlassian for 9 years next month. I have been very fortunate to grow my career as Atlassian has grown. Something like that, Robert. More the guy who supports people once the money has been doled out. But yep, something like that. And generally, I've always made a really concerted effort in my time at Atlassian to not just focus on my job, but really be involved in a lot of culture and values programs across Atlassian. I think that's one of the things that has made it really fun to work at Atlassian. Hi, Clef. Hello. Thank you for that. And really, I'm sort of excited to see where this conversation takes us today. I'm definitely going to be as much of an open book as I possibly can, and we can kind of keep things, at a high level, dive deep. I'm really here, Alex and Rodney, to kind of follow whatever conversation path makes the most sense for the audience.
Well, if you watched Mark Kluth's presentation, which was right after we were in San Francisco, we had so much fun. So I think you're officially our second Atlassian, no?
Okay.
No, because we had the certification girls on.
You're our fourth then.
I went from being on the podium to not even medaling. So
no, Joanna and Marie got you.
That's all right. I can take it. That's okay.
Was there anybody before them? Huh? Was there anybody before them?
I don't.
Well, you're number 4, so welcome.
I'll take it. Hey, I'm still on the first hand.
Top five here, man.
Yeah, that counts. That absolutely counts. No, I'm really excited, guys. And as I said, happy to take this in whatever way makes the most sense.
Well, this is the Jira Life, and I like to interrupt, so get ready for that. And we're just gonna have some fun with it. Ronnie usually has the agenda, and he's usually the one that reels me back in. But yeah, let's just jump into it, Ronnie. Where do you want to kick things off?
Well, I mean, let's just dig into it. Philip, why don't you give us a second to talk about what actually Atlassian Ventures is,
Sure.
Why Atlassian would need a capital venture fund, and how does it help the ecosystem?
Absolutely. I really appreciate the opportunity to explain it. So Atlassian Ventures, as I mentioned a moment ago, and as Rodney just said, is Atlassian's corporate venture capital fund. And what that really means in more practical or layman's terms is we exist to quite literally invest in companies who are growing the Atlassian ecosystem and providing even more value to the mutual end customer. And typically speaking, the way that manifests itself in our investment portfolio is we typically invest in 2 types of companies. The first type of company are companies who are launching apps directly in the Atlassian marketplace. That part of our investment thesis is rooted in a very public-facing Atlassian statistic, which is that customers who download at least one marketplace app are 50% less likely to churn than customers who don't. So from our perspective as investors, we want to quite literally fund more development in the ecosystem so that more use cases are covered, so there's better breadth of extensibility. And I sort of on and on from there. So that's the first type of company. Generally, but not exclusively, those are pretty early stage businesses. In venture capital terms, those would be sort of pre-seed and seed stage businesses. And sometimes, in that sense, we've even invested in companies who haven't even launched their product yet, but the idea is really meaningful and we see differentiation and we can see that value to the customer. So we go ahead and make an investment there. We also invest in companies who are integrating or will deepen their integrations with Atlassian products through APIs. And so sometimes those companies have marketplaces, sometimes they don't. But the thesis of those investments is rooted much more in extensibility through APIs. Typically, those are slightly more mature businesses, not necessarily because they have APIs, but just based on some of the pattern recognition we've seen. In venture capital terms, those are more sort of what you would call a growth stage business, sort of Series A and beyond. And the purpose of those investments is not necessarily, of course, Atlassian marketplace in the micro, quote unquote, but it's much more about the much broader ecosystem and enabling the mutual end customer to kind of meet them wherever they are in their workflows. And in certain cases, Atlassian will establish proper partnerships with some of those more mature companies. And otherwise, we are here to be investors and sort of help them really sort of navigate Atlassian. And that's really where my job comes in. I do typically tend to look after some of the earlier stage investments in the marketplace, but by title as portfolio management lead, my primary goal and my day-to-day responsibility is to really help the companies in our portfolio get the most value out of our investment, where in that sentence, Rodney and Alex, the word value has nothing to do with the money we invest or the capital we deploy, but it has everything to do with helping them sort of take advantage of everything that Atlassian as a sort of bigger, more mature organization can help them either do better, faster, stronger, so to speak.
So much to unpack.
Definitely
so much. Ronnie, I'll let you go first because I have not let the script per the norm, so I don't want to deviate you too much.
I mean, I know we got to be careful with specific names because that could affect how things go. But is there anything more you could tell us about how Atlassian Ventures may impact your typical Jira admins or Atlassian admins life?
That's a great question. I suppose, yeah. And if I veer a little too far off piste, even for Alex, like rein me back in. I'd say that the way that Ventures can be helpful for that core persona you're talking about, Rodney, sort of your Jira admin persona, is that the companies in which we invest, to put it quite bluntly, I guess, we've vetted them, for lack of a better word. Now, that's not to say that every company in the Ventures portfolio, which you can see, for example, at Atlassian.com/ventures, is necessarily, I don't know, the next Google or whatever from sort of a growth perspective. But it does mean that we've really looked under the hood, both from a product and a business perspective, and we've chosen to invest because we really do believe in the symbiotic value to the customer. So I guess one way, and I honestly have never really thought about it this way, but it is an interesting way to think about it, Rodney. One way is you could say that if you're looking for a set of companies, either marketplace apps or standalone products that are deeply integrated with Atlassian, you could say that here's a short list for you, for example. Now, I'm not here to say that this is every use case under the sun by any means, but the near 60 companies that you'll see here in the portfolio, or if you go to the marketplace page, we actually have a dedicated collection for the vendors in the portfolio who are in the marketplace. So in some way, you could, I guess, make the argument that like we have kind of done some of the heavy lifting and created a short list for you. That's one way, I suppose, that someone like in a day-to-day Jira admin role might be able to leverage some of the work we do with Ventures. I don't know, but let me flip that back at you. Like, since I say that, again, with a little bit of an on-the-fly answer, like, does that resonate?
I mean, I think it does. I think most of the people that would talk have engineering or more technical background. I actually have a business background,
okay.
Information systems specifically. So I kind of understand where you're getting from. And the thing is, and I've said this before, Atlassian, even now, even after explosive growth over the past 5 years, is still a much smaller company than people think it is.
I agree with that. Full stop.
And they don't really have the development hours to do every use case under the sun. So the thing the marketplace has brought, and I think Atlassian Ventures really helped with, is it really enables those edge cases to be covered. Those, I want to do something crazy that makes sense for my workflow and how my organization works, but maybe only 1% of other companies in the world do. It allows the marketplace, and by extension Ventures, allows those use cases to be covered by the tool without Atlassian having to chase all those 1%, spending all the hours on that. So they could just focus on what impacts everyone and let the marketplace handle those cases.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think in some sense, sometimes I like this metaphor. Sometimes it falls flat. I admit what I'm about to say. But the way I kind of think about the marketplace is that Atlassian has laid down the tracks, and it is now up to an entrepreneur to build a train car. But you don't have to build the tracks. The tracks are already laid. So yes, you want to figure out how to make it differentiated, how to make it unique, how to have a sort of unique value proposition to the customer, because the marketplace, there is also some healthy competition in there. But yeah, fundamentally, I think we're kind of circling around very similar concepts and saying some somewhat similar things, Rodney, maybe in different ways. But I tend to agree with what you said for sure.
My question that I have for you then is, when Atlassian built something natively into the tool, it feels polished because it's part of the DNA, right? But taking something like backups, right, where Revise, which I saw on the lister, right, they do backups really, really well, and it's easy. But I've always felt like, isn't backup something that should have natively been done, like internally, like that works better? Because the native backup solution from Jira sucks, right? And so where do you guys, how do you guys, when you make these decisions, how do you determine what becomes a feature natively? What should we let invest in a company? Like, what does that thought process look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for those who've asked questions in the chat, I see them as well.
We'll come back.
No, that's great. As long as someone's there, that's great. No, so I think I appreciate you asking this question, Alex, because it is a very important thing. Atlassian Ventures is unquestionably downstream of Atlassian's product strategy. So we are not here going up to the product leaders and saying, hey, we found these incredible companies to invest in. Like, are you going to build this stuff or should we invest in them? It's quite the opposite. We work very closely with product and strategy folks at Atlassian to understand what is on the first party roadmap, meaning build for Atlassian. Where are there potential partnership opportunities? And then, frankly, where do we see the holes? And it might sound very counterintuitive, but the holes are sometimes what I colloquially refer to as like the anti-roadmap. That's actually the best hunting ground for Atlassian Ventures, because we don't necessarily want to go invest in companies where Atlassian is either already building something or might soon. And it's not because we don't think those would be good investments. It's because, as you just said, once something becomes native, at least in theory, it would have, to use your phrase, Alex, a bit more polish on it because, well, it's a native feature or a new native product or what have you. So we really try to go out and leverage that extensibility pillar of the Atlassian platform to extend the core functionality. Now, the core functionality is always changing and growing, almost by definition of just running a growing business. But that doesn't mean that at any given time, there's not a sort of a different or a quarterized or a real-time anti-roadmap that we can go out and use as sort of a quote-unquote treasure map to go try to meet some of these companies that might be particularly interesting. Or even if someone hasn't identified specific companies from the product or strategy side, if there's like a domain, I'll just use backups. I know that's a bad example because we're talking about it here, but hypothetically, if there was something different, I don't know, I'm going to make something up totally that's not in the Atlassian world on purpose. Dog walking. Great. Let's go find some dog walking businesses to invest in. And maybe there's a way to become sort of accretive to the customer value that Atlassian provides.
Now, why a venture versus a fund? Because like Apple does this
one in the same. Right? One in the same.
But how? Because I feel like when Apple goes and says, hey, I got a new Vision Pro, I'm going to fund some software developing company to go build apps for the ecosystem, that is just monies, but ownership is given. And I feel like ventures with the VCs implies ownership, where Atlassian owns some of it.
I suppose that's right. I guess the Apple example to me is more like a partnership development fund, or at least that's what I would call it, where there's no expectation of financial returns. But yes, I mean, we are. So I might use the word venture fund, but in the way you positioned it, Alex, we are a venture. We are ventures. When we invest, and all of this is actually, you can read about it on Atlassian.com/ventures. In typical Atlassian open company, no BS fashion, we have we have publicly published a couple blogs that, and also our investment contracts. And so there, the reason I bring that up, sorry, a bit of a jumbled thought, is because you will see that we don't take board seats and we don't ask for board observer seats when we invest. And so, yes, technically speaking, there is a small ownership percent. If we invest on a convertible note, it only becomes ownership percent if there's a conversion event. And if it's something that's more of a priced round, yes, but we are typically a very small check, even in large rounds. So for us, it's not about maintaining a static ownership percentage, like 8% ownership or whatever, throughout the lifetime of an investment. It's much more about sort of the relationship. It's much more about sort of the 1 + 1 = 3 value for the end customer. So now, if your question to me is like, well, why don't you do the partner development fund model? That's I'd have to send that up the ladder and see what comes back.
I just thought it was interesting, right? Because like I would see that there may be a potential for conflict, because Boeing 100 years ago got caught by this, right? Where they created the airplane, but then they also created the airline. And they started monopolizing it. So I can see opportunities where like, well, what's to stop Atlassian from creating all these ventures that basically just fill in gaps, but then eventually just monopolize back because you technically own the marketplace.
But we don't. Well, we own the marketplace, but we don't own these companies in which we invest by any means.
That's where I was getting confused with. Like, venturing
no.
into them.
There is not a single investment we have where we even come close to owning 51% of any.
Right. That's kind of where I was getting lost with it.
I got you. No, that makes much more sense. I understand your question now.
Yeah, versus like, hey, here's $1 million. Go forth and take out of this pool of money and go, and I'm gonna just just like a Kickstarter almost. So that's more how you operate then. Well,
no, I think that's a little oversimplified. I mean, we do make a formal investment and there are terms to that investment. It's not just like, oh, cool idea, send me the product in 3 years if you actually build this sneaker. like, there's a formal legal contract and we do formal diligence. So I mean, again, like if you're creating a false dichotomy for me where it's like Kickstarter over here and like partner development fund over here, I mean, sure, I guess it's 51% closer to the former, but I'd say the better mental model for anyone for whom this is familiar, it is much more of a venture fund than, and not much more. It is a venture fund. It just so happens that it's a corporate venture fund. We don't have limited partners or anything, so we don't take outside funding, but our investment thesis is focused on Atlassian. And when it comes to realized gains, paper gains, follow-on investments, secondary share opportunities, like, we're doing sort of all the same stuff, maybe not at the same scale of some of the institutional investors, the Sequoias and the Lightspeeds and what have you. But fundamentally, we operate the same way, just on a smaller scale.
So sorry, Rodney. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll let you go.
I'll
I got one more big one for you.
Sure.
So you've stated that you don't go to the product owners, product managers, and go, "Are you planning to do this feature?" Does it go the other way around? Do the product managers tell you, "Look, we've got this feature people want. We're not going to do it as a company," and do you then take that and go to a company you funded that does something similar and say, "Hey, here's an opportunity for you"?
That's kind of interesting. I don't think we've done anything that sort of like A, B, C in linear fashion there, but I think that if I reflect on my 2.25 years in this role, I think what would be more common is that by introducing portfolio founder and executives and just key people on the team to the right Atlassians, we want to empower and enable them, Rodney, to have those conversations directly. So Atlassian Ventures does not at all have to be in the middle of any or even one conversation. Sure, we might be the tip of the spear after we invest to help people get introduced. But once we've introduced someone to the right person, we don't need to be CC'd on emails. It's not our protocol to be on every call. We don't need to be mentioned on pages, etc. Like, we're really here to help companies figure out the best way to navigate Atlassian. And once they've sort of figured out who their key, let's say, quote unquote partners are within the company, then we want them to build very deep and long-standing durable relationships together. So, we would expect, I guess, in the framing of your question there, Rodney, that information could be shared directly between a product leader, a strategy leader, what have you, directly with, someone in who's their point of contact within the portfolio company.
I got a couple questions, but I'll ask the first one's the easy one, right? So let's just say I want to build an app, right?
Okay.
And Rodney's building another app, but Rodney's in the Atlassian Ventures program. Like, what differences would he have, or benefits, or if any, that Rodney would have going through the program versus me just kind of like cowboying it up on the side over here, just trying to figure life out?
Yeah, I mean, the sort of blunt answer is actual money. Would be the biggest difference there. Like, he would get an investment, a dollars and cents investment, as anyone can see on Atlassian.com/ventures. If you scroll to the bottom left, we've publicly published our convertible note. So our typical earliest stage investment is $250,000 US. So there's that. And then there are perks and benefits, I suppose, of being a ventures portfolio company. I mean, without trying to sort of pat myself on the back, there is a team of people who are there to help you get answers quicker, unblock faster, sort of clarity.
Not countless hours through the
and it's not like, we're not here to provide anyone an inside track, right? I have no ability to get your ticket to the top of the queue. I don't have an ability to move your ticket from, minor to critical, or, that's not what I'm here to do. But what I can do is, if it's been, let's say, a reasonable amount of time, 3 days, 5 days, whatever it might be, and someone hasn't answered your question, yeah, I can go ahead, and sort of say, hey, we got this ticket out here. I know you got a lot of competing priorities, but if you might be able to get to this today, that'd be great. So I suppose you have someone who's not here to hold your hand, Alex, but you have someone to kind of help you. I've used this word a few times, but really navigate Atlassian. And I'd say that's the biggest thing. And then there are...
Why not publish that? Because I've been trying to start up an app for like forever, but just figuring out that first step has been like the hardest critical step, because I don't even know how to get started. As a Justin, right? I have an idea for an app that I want to make for Atlassian ecosystem, but trying to get started is like, yeah, go to the API, cool. But there's no easy way to get in there.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's probably a much broader, more sophisticated conversation for us to have, like with the actual marketplace team. But I do know that all of the documentation for our development platforms, Forge and Connect, are public. I am semi-technical at best, really, really dumb at worst. So I'm not necessarily the best person to give advice to on that front. But I will say, if I'm being intellectually honest, it's not all just sunshine and rainbows. I mean, in the example you gave where Rodney took venture investment and you didn't, Rodney now technically has an investor, which means that he has to sort of, answer some questions and share financials and agree to all the stuff that's in our contract. And I'm not here to say that we're particularly onerous, but I do some guest lecture stuff at my alma mater at UC Berkeley. And I really do tell people every time we start every semester, if you don't need to raise $1 of venture capital, why would you? Like, just because you raise money from us or anyone else doesn't mean that you're running a successful business necessarily. Sure, it means someone agrees with your idea and your differentiation and your problem statement. But, taking venture money doesn't mean anything other than you've taken venture money. And if you can bootstrap your own company, or at least up to a point, and then if you need the capital to really accelerate growth, sure, what have you. But sometimes people need that initial seed capital, and that's where the venture model is really powerful. But if you don't necessarily need it, I am not here to tell you to take the money just for the sake of the money. And let me also say something even further upstream. I'm also not here to tell anyone who has an idea for a SaaS product that you need to go build it in the Atlassian marketplace or even integrate with Atlassian. If that is accretive and makes sense for your business and the product and your customer set potentially overlaps with Atlassian, awesome. I think Atlassian Ventures is great. I really enjoy the work I do. I love working with the entrepreneurs in our portfolio. But again, I used this example before, so I know it's a dumb example, but like if you're going to create like a dog walking app, like, no, I don't know that integrating with Atlassian is necessarily beneficial for you, right? So like, and I have told entrepreneurs on calls flat out, I have said, don't tell me it makes sense to build a marketplace app because you're on the phone with me. Tell me that makes sense because you've really thought it through. And if you haven't thought it through, that's okay too. Go take some more time, figure it out. So in that sense, we really do try to make sure that we are discerning in our investments, and that when we do invest, we really want to create that differentiation and truly, truly, more to the point, value for the end customer.
Yeah. So my second question that I had two questions. I started it when I had two questions.
All right, you ask your second question, but it does kind of segue to a question we have in the chat. So
okay, we will get, chat. We are coming for you. I'm almost done. Okay, second question is, okay, so dang it, bring an apple. I come from the defense world, right? I come from military world, and out there, the Pentagon or Department of Defense, they put out like requests for proposals, right? They're like, hey, here's some gap in our military systems. Go forth and like, we want ideas, right? Mm-hmm. Does Atlassian like, because you get, I'm assuming you get pitched so much, right? And you know the roadmap because you're working upstream with, I guess you said you were downstream, but you're working, you're collaborating with the people that get to see the vision. You get to see what's in the ventures and what gaps are still remaining. Any thoughts on like, or just ideas or opportunities for, again, just the place? Like, what if somebody does have that entrepreneurship mindset and just wants to, like, maybe they want to just build something that hasn't been built, and like Atlassian's like, here's a list. Like, does that exist at all? Or
that's pretty interesting. I don't believe there's any sort of public-facing anti-roadmap, but I suppose a very entrepreneur, that was a terrible phrase, a very enterprising entrepreneur could kind of quote unquote reverse engineer the roadmap. So I would say that if that's the case, I would say the best thing that is probably publicly available today is to look at the various roadmaps for one or multiple products or at the ecosystem level. And if you see something that doesn't exist in the ecosystem and it's not on the roadmap, I mean, I don't think I'm like sort of revealing any grand secret, and I'm not trying to like whisper or wink to anybody, but right. I think at the moment, short of Atlassian making a corporate decision that that's something they would release. And frankly, to be fair to Atlassian, I don't know that it would make sense to release that because strategies do change and priorities change and opportunities change as well. But I suppose someone could kind of like glue it all together today.
Yeah, but like a little deeper though, right? Because there's got to be things where like let's just take the backup example, right? Sure. And let's just say Atlassian's like, they determine we're not going to invest in this, but there's also no worthy opponent in the marketplace. Like a request for proposal, right? Like just say like, is anybody interested? Maybe there's some funding, right? Because like the military world will give out like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to get started just to see your proposal. and then they'll kind of go from there. Or I guess
I think it's a very different model, Alex.
Let me pitch it backwards though. When the Atlassian venture companies come to you, do they come with the idea, or do you go to them with the idea?
Both. So people come to us, we call that inbound, and we also go outbound and try to find companies in a particular domain or working on a particular product or trying to tackle a particular problem set. So in that sense, the actual sort of introduction as far as getting to know companies absolutely is both inbound and outbound. But it's not an RFP because we're not trying to actually bring on customers in that regard or vendors. Like we are really, I know I don't mean to like say this so plainly, but like we really are making hard dollar investments in these companies. So for us, like, I guess part of my job is to do that RFP by trying to figure out what is the landscape. We just don't do, it would be, I think, unprofessional, irresponsible if you said, hey, we're having an investment contest, so to speak. Like that's the equivalent of like what the RFP, I guess, would be like in a
right, yeah. I mean, that's all it is. It's just a contest.
All right.
At the RFP, but
I see. Yes.
The
and
RFPs are
really
just contests,
in a previous life, so I know what it's all about responding to those.
Cool.
But it's definitely.
Okay. Well,
I think I understand
insightful.
your point at the abstraction level. I guess I agree, but I think it's a little bit different when you get down to the practical reality of it.
Cool. I'll yield my time.
Right. So, looking at some of the questions here, you mentioned that you tell students, young entrepreneurs, if you don't have to take seed money, venture money, don't. But have you ever found that because the company has had to open their books and agree to everything, that their reputation within just the general market has improved because they are a part of the portfolio, or does it really impact things?
I don't think it's as sort of like snap your fingers and that happens, but I think that the most sophisticated entrepreneurs in our portfolio leverage their inclusion in the portfolio to their advantage. And so in that sense, you know, whether it's someone putting funded by or backed by Atlassian Ventures on their homepage, or one way we've tried to do this through promotion is, as I mentioned earlier, Rodney, you know, we have this it's actually probably about a year old now. We have a dedicated collection, that's the word in the marketplace, of apps that are only from Atlassian Ventures portfolio companies. So, you know, I'm not here to necessarily say that, you know, taking investment from Atlassian Ventures means your sales are going to double overnight. But I think if you leverage us as investors the right way, I think it's only beneficial, especially if you are going after either in the marketplace, I guess it would be, you know, like in a singular sense, the Atlassian customer, and in an API-based integration, you know, sort of that mutual end customer.
I mean, I could also see as maybe another venture capital fund or another investor, angel investor, or what have you, going, oh, I see you've already opened your books. I see you've already been through this process once. That makes you a more attractive company for me to potentially invest in because I know you've already been through this at least once.
Sorry. So is the question, does it help?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, it is in a way, does it help, but it was more a statement than a question. It's more like, I could see that helping out if I were looking at a company to invest in. Oh, they've already been through this. I know
I
that
see.
they're at least somewhat steady ground.
I got you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that also, you know, one way for us to look at that would be if you've taken money in the past and or if it's in a different situation, if someone's analyzing a company in which we've invested, I think you'd also look at the investor set. It's not just, oh, you've been through the process, so, okay, that's great. I think it would be sort of like, you know, we would always go back to basics and look at not just what is the product, but also the fundamentals of the business as well. Is the business healthy? Is it growing? Are there reputable investors who we know? Is there anyone who we can do a reference check with, what have you? So I don't think it's just the process itself would make someone more attractive to us. But fundamentally, I think if you've been through the process as a founder or an executive, you at least know the rhythms and the beats. But I would say if we abstract away from sort of the venture conversation, I think that's true with anything. You know, the more you do anything in life, I think the more comfortable you get with it. But just because you've taken money in the past for us from anyone doesn't make you necessarily more attractive to us as a potential investment in the future.
All right. Another question we have here, and I don't know if you could actually answer this one, and it may be a who's your favorite child question. You don't really want to answer a question like that, but Sean, one of our regular attendees, asked, who has been Venture's biggest success?
Oh, interesting question. Thank you for that, Sean. I don't think it's necessarily the right way to answer it as biggest, but if you actually go back to Atlassian.com/ventures, we have been fortunate enough to have some successful exits. Some companies have gotten acquired. Yeah, actually, Robert, that's probably true. Technically speaking, before I was on the team, Atlassian did invest in Slack, and that was a very timely investment. And beyond that, certainly I'm not at liberty to discuss like the terms of any one company's exit. So I would just say, if you're curious to see who has successfully exited the portfolio, we keep that updated in real time on, there's a separate tab. I think it says acquired is the tab on the portfolio company page.
Yeah, Slack is a bit, I was using HipChat at the time that was done. And I miss HipChat.
I thought HipChat was not a word that was allowed to be said in this podcast.
I'm breaking rules today.
Oh, HipChat. We should have an episode just to honor HipChat.
Oh, you could get some very, very passionate Atlassians about that. I have no doubt. I have no doubt.
I'll put out an RFP for who wants to come.
Yeah, fair enough. Great. And then you can give them $20 each to reply to your RFP.
Yeah, there you go.
So
we're not doing a 24
Go ahead, Alex.
No, I'm just trying to kill any ideas of 24-hour live streams. Never again that happening in my life.
I think if we were to do it again, Alex, we do it in such a way that we're not all on for 24 hours straight.
It's just not going to happen again. So just kill it before stop it. Do you, I guess, do you guys ever get ideas that are just so far-fetched that you're like, no?
Yes, all the time. More than I say yes. I say no way more often than we say pass, way more often than we say let's have another call.
Is that a number you guys can share? Not the no's, but like how many applicants do you guys get like a year?
I haven't counted it, but I would say that on the marketplace side, where we have that self-service application on the website, we're probably getting on average at least 2 or 3 a week. And then that's to say nothing of opportunities that come to us more organically. And that's not to even include opportunities that we go out and try to source ourselves. So I guess
on a scale of like Harvard admittance to Cal State, LA admittance, like where do you guys stand ratio-wise? Do I have a better chance of getting into Harvard, or do I have a better chance of getting into the Atlassian Ventures?
I don't think it's not about chance, right? It's you have to understand what our investment thesis is. And I'm not trying to punt on your question, Alex. It's
no. I'm just asking questions.
We've had people who submit applications for, I don't know, to build an app that is gonna, manage an entire apartment complex or something, but it has no Atlassian tie-in, right? So and I don't begrudge anyone for applying for funding. If you need funding, go look far and wide. Right. It's, it's not easy to raise money either. So I don't think it's really, I'm not trying to provide a shady answer. I don't know the percentages, but we are not just doling out money left and right. Like when we do choose to invest, there's a multi-step process that includes both product and business deep dives as well as diligence. So, the thing I just want anyone to take away who is watching live or listen to this after the fact is that, if your idea of applying is like, oh, well, this would be sweet, $250,000, great, I can just quit my job and piss off and whatever. It's not really what we're here doing. We're not just giving the money out. We're really trying to seed the next generation of successful businesses in the Atlassian ecosystem so that we can continue to provide even more value to the customer.
Again, I know this question is going to tread very close to the line here, but I'm going to rephrase it from how Bob had actually written it in here. But have you had any companies that you have seeded or funded go on to eventually be acquired by Atlassian?
Great question. The answer is no. We have not acquired any company in which we have invested. I'm not here to say that the answer will be no forever, but that is not something that we have done to date. And frankly, that's not the reason we invest. So Atlassian's corporate development department is made up of 3 functions. There's the M&A team, there's my team, Ventures, and there's partnerships. And the reason I just bring this up is because we learned pretty early on when I joined the ventures team, and I was one of the first 2 people ever on the team full time, that if there is M&A interest, we want that conversation to be a standalone conversation. We are not here to try to invest so we can look under the hood and get a sense of if we're going to acquire or not. Like, yeah, there's some collaboration that happens between the M&A team and the ventures team, but for all intents and purposes, we're 2 very separate teams that just so happen to be part of one department structure at Atlassian. And if the org structure changed, ventures would still do what it does, and M&A would still do what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of value in ventures from just like a cultural perspective, right? Like, it's so much more than just money.
I think so. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I like
again, when you're looking at it from an outsider perspective, right? You see ventures and Atlassian, right? And then all the information that you know about VCs and how all that works it's so much more different, because like it's almost like you said it the best here with the whole you are laying down that infrastructure so that others can come in and be creative and help succeed, but we all succeed together, right? It's like
100%
kind of like, we're going to help you, we're going to give you like best practices and guide you, but at the same time, like, you have some creative freedom to do what's important to the ecosystem. So my next question would be then, how do you guys determine what's next, like what's needed?
What's next and needed from an ecosystem perspective?
Yeah, like how do you know?
Well, that's where it helps to work very, very closely and collaboratively with product and strategy leaders at Atlassian. So, ventures is not here to define any of that necessarily. If anything, we consume that. So if your question is more like, well, how does Atlassian decide what its next big bet is and whatnot? I could recklessly speculate on having observed how that all works for 9 years as an employee, but I don't really, I've never been in those rooms. I don't necessarily know what the analysis looks like, but I'm sure it is pretty holistic. I'm sure it is not just sort of where Atlassian thinks its markets can go, but looking at the competition and how Atlassian can position itself there. And in that sense, I don't know that it's materially any different than how any company, especially in the SaaS space, chooses to expand its own horizons.
Very, very interesting. I'm learning so much from this one. Rodney, what's next on this list of ours? Well, we have a question here from Sean. Do you want to ask that one?
Yeah. Sean's back asking, is Ventures considering companies that are helping to make JSM or JWM or any of the other Jira variants more appealing to non-software, non-technical teams?
Great question. Thank you for the second really nice question, Sean. So I wouldn't say that we're going out here with any sort of like lens or filter of like, how do we make the products more attractive to non-technical teams? That's probably actually, in my mind, more of a product or even a marketing question. But are we always looking for potentially sort of, we are definitely, as part of our analysis, Sean, and whoever else is interested in this, certainly trying to understand when we look at any given company, if this company sort of fits one of Atlassian's core personas, multiple of Atlassian's core personas, is it sort of a net new persona, what have you? And in that sense, one thing that we do with every single investment that we analyze is the Atlassian Ventures team is the first tip of the spear. So the introductory conversation, the initial notes, sort of a gut feeling on something. But every investment that we have ever done goes through a deep dive with a product or a subject matter expert at Atlassian. So in that sense, it's not just, does the Ventures team like this? Like, part of the benefit of being here at Atlassian is we have the benefit of Atlassian. And I know that that's a turn of phrase, but what I mean by that is, it's not just up to me and the Ventures team to determine if something is unique, differentiated, and adding value to the customer. We also get folks who are eating and breathing everything related to a particular customer or a particular persona, I guess in this case, sort of non-technical, non-software teams, Sean. And there are people at Atlassian who are eating and breathing and thinking about that problem all day long. And if a particular investment could benefit from that perspective, when we do a product deep dive or even a business deep dive after an initial conversation or two, we would bring those people or that person onto a call so they could also sort of provide their own feedback for our internal process. And then every single investment we do, if you get through that step, goes to a cross-functional investment committee made up of some pretty senior leaders at Atlassian. And the Ventures team is actually there to truly present an investment memo. It's not just like, hey, here's a couple cool slides. It's, we really get into the nitty-gritty of the business. We talk about risks. We talk about the competitive landscape. We talk about the actual mechanics of the investment, not just what Atlassian's investment would be, but what if it's a big round, what the round size is, what our ownership percentage would be. here are the other investors, here's what we've learned through our process, we've done some reference checks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we really do run a pretty holistic process.
We talked about some of the benefits that these Atlassian Ventures companies get, but do you offer for the folks that do get selected, like fly them out to HQ and sit down with developers or with the product teams in any way, or any of those kind of like, I'm thinking like the YC, right? Like the way that they kind of have like almost like a curriculum designed to maybe how to maximize your chances of monetization, right? Or how to how to make sure your app gets published or accepted better, or things like that. Are those resources that are available to them?
Not as programmatically as an accelerator like YC. And frankly, like that's also like, that is all YC does. That is their business model, right? And so I think the other thing to keep in mind for us is we're usually not the only investor when we invest, Alex. So I'm not here to say that something like that would not be productive and would not be actually really fun. I think that would actually be incredibly interesting in both directions for the entrepreneurs and for the Atlassians who would participate. But if we were going to do that, we would probably only do that with a subset of companies in our investment portfolio, not because we're picking and choosing favorites, but it would be the ones where we feel that the Atlassian, I don't know what's the right word, like
way of life.
Yeah. Pretty much, we said the same thing. That would truly benefit them in an exponential way, more than just like move the needle a point or two. And I think that if the model were ever to shift, where we went from being more often minority investors to leading investment rounds, taking board seats, things like that, maybe we would change that model. But at the moment, we don't have that set up. And it's not so much that we haven't talked about on the venture side, but the other thing is that's a big investment, no pun intended, for the people who take the time. So it doesn't just cost the money to fly them there and whatnot, but there's obviously the opportunity cost. If we took 6 PMs from across the teams and a few engineers and whatever, we would have to, obviously, we'd be taking them off of their regular work. And so the ventures team does not have technical resources at the moment, at least not dedicated to ventures. We've developed some really strong internal partnerships and continue to do so. But we don't have that concept of these are my words, of course. We don't really have an accelerator concept, independent from the investment.
Now, what about on a similar note? Not necessarily an accelerator program, but Microsoft has their Build, Apple does their WWDC, Facebook's got their Connect. I don't see Atlassian having like a developer-focused conference. Any insight on that or thoughts? Like a day where we just come as developers of the Atlassian ecosystem.
Oh, that's interesting. That's pretty interesting. I guess I've always seen things like Atlas Camp and Codegeist kind of pretty close to that. But yeah, I suppose you're right. I mean, I guess, if we think about Team 24 coming up in 10 days as like Atlassian's large customer conference, I suppose you're right. There's not necessarily an explicit Atlassian ecosystem dev conference, but that's well beyond.
Might have to start one now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a cool idea. I think Ventures would be very... I think Ventures would have a really compelling and interesting time at an event like that, both to talk to entrepreneurs and also provide advice, whatever. But that's probably a much more company-wide program than just something Ventures would be.
Interesting, Rodney. We're gonna have to reach out to our network and get Jexo and everybody who's made apps and let's just make a dev day and share best practices. Because again, my biggest problem is I don't know how to do that first step. I want to make an app, but I don't know how to take that first step.
I was about to say, Alex, you know what happens when you say something like that? We become responsible for it.
Well, hey guys, you told me to be freewheeling here, so I guess I took your advice a little too literally.
No, we love it. We love it. I am going to have to pivot us off. We do have some news to talk about this week. So starting us off, Atlassian on Tuesday announced another round of CVEs for the month of April in their monthly bulletin. These, no vulnerability is great, but these on the whole are, there's definitely worse out there.
Is it like the first batch since February 15th?
No, this is like the third.
Okay. Because I was on a call with somebody. I was like, oh, don't worry, because you're still on the server version. Don't worry, there hasn't been anything since February. But oops.
The worst of it this month is with Bamboo, which we all know Bamboo. It's not, I've yet to meet the person who says that that's their favorite, but it does have the worst vulnerability this week. And I should note that these are all upstream vulnerabilities from libraries that the developers brought in to help do a certain thing. So it's not like Atlassian did.
Patch now is the best tip. Philip, I forgot to ask at the beginning, but you mentioned last 2.25 years you've been doing ventures. What else did you do at Atlassian?
Ooh, excellent question. Depending on how much.
Sorry, Rodney can.
Well, before I do that, I do want to respect the macro agenda. Rodney, do I have time, or do you want to keep going? And if we have time after you get through your stuff, then I can do that.
Let's cover one more news piece.
Please.
We'll let you talk about that for a few minutes, but then we have to get to the quick Quizlet.
Great. I can be the commercial for your news segment.
All right. So second piece of news we have this week is us. Team 24 is coming up. We've been saying we're going to be doing a lot at Team. We're finally able to reveal what we're doing. Alex, who talked who into this?
Me into you?
I'm not sure who talked who into this, but we are doing 4 shows.
We have 4 shows, yeah. It's going to be fun. We're doing 4 live streams. I'm bringing all the equipment. We're going to have cameras, microphones. And I think the biggest invitation is we want you all to be there in person. This is just a little trip down memory lane. Rodney and I got a microphone, popped up in front of the university booth. Yeah, the community and university was together, right? Like they joined.
Yeah, they are again this year.
And we hit record, and the Jira Life was born.
Yeah,
at least for another month or 2. Right. But this is going to be the first opportunity in the year that we've had the Jira Life that we're all going to be in the room together. I know Robert has come physically to my house and we've done one together, but this is going to be a chance to maybe be in the audience. And so, Jira Life live for reals.
Yeah. If you're at Team 24, stop by. Tuesday, we're going to be at Resolutions booth number 42. Wednesday morning before the keynote, we're going to be with Deezer over in booth 127. Wednesday afternoon, we're going to be with Trundle at booth 49. And we're going to be just outside the expo hall, wrapping things up right as the expo hall closes at 2 o'clock. Thursday, this is our normal stream time, so it's the same time you're viewing now. If you can't make Team 24, these will be streamed as per normal.
Yeah, we just won't be able to pan the camera and show you and be in the show.
So I'm super excited about this.
Hope to see you all there.
I'm excited too. I'll be there.
Stop
by the Ventures booth, Rodney.
Yeah, we might have to do a little tour.
It's definitely going to be a thing. I was there last year too.
Awesome. Great. Well, I don't know. I think I know. I think we're on the right side, like right off of the big product hub. But I suppose I can confirm that at a later time.
Cool. So we got a few minutes left. What did you do before?
Yeah, great question. So I can go back even further. I first got introduced to Atlassian in probably the 2011-12 range when I was working at a different company, a very small company that had a natural gas transaction software product, which is neither really here nor there. That's just what we did. And we used Jira and Confluence for a combination of internal product-facing work and external client implementation work. And so long story short, at some point in that role, I kind of got vaulted into kind of like an accidental, I don't want to necessarily say Jira admin because I think
everybody falls into that.
Well, right. But I say that because like what we were doing was not nearly as sophisticated, I don't think, back then for a small company. But I just got to know the tools. I learned a little bit about the company. Back then, especially in my mind, the tools actually just worked and they were so much better than what the competition was that I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And a few years later, I decided to go back to school. I went to graduate school and I was already here in San Francisco and I went to UC Berkeley for graduate school. And the long story short of it, Alex, is I had to find a summer internship between the 2 years in grad school. And at the time, Atlassian was a much smaller company, not nearly as mature from both a product and process standpoint. And so what I did was I actually found a guy who had finished the grad program that I was in just before I got there. He was working as a brand new data scientist at Atlassian, or maybe data analyst. I don't know if data scientist was technically even a job title back then. And I just reached out to him and I said, hey, could I come have lunch and check out the office? And we got along. And then I just said, hey, I use the products. I know how to use them. I love the products. The company seems great. The culture seems cool. Would you be willing to just blast the San Francisco office and see if someone needs like a project manager type person for the summer? And I was really, really lucky. I got connected to some folks who are still working at Atlassian, but they were at the time in Atlassian's customer support department, which back then was actually called Customers for Life, C4L. So I came in for the summer, and it's very funny. I get to tell the story to people who, what I'm about to say, it'll truly resonate. Normally people are like, I don't know what that means, but okay. So my job for the summer was to take 11 unique Confluence spaces and propose an information architecture and actually combine them into a single space for the customer support team. So I did that for the whole summer. It went really well. I kept working for Atlassian in a very limited part-time capacity when I went back to grad school for the second year because my academic program was full-time. So I was just like a part-time contractor working on what I call like a lot of like competitive research stuff. It was important, but not particularly time sensitive. Then fast forward, I graduated from grad school and I worked on a project at Atlassian for about 2.5 years where we tried to replace our homegrown billing system with a more mature solution. I started off in a finance role there. I ended up kind of getting shifted over to IT. My job title at that time was Senior Product Manager, quote to cash. And so then at some point that whole project got paused. And I was in IT, which when I was on the delivery side of the project, I didn't really care where I was because everyone on the program was there. Then I moved back to finance where I was in an ops role. And then immediately prior to Ventures, I was the chief of staff to our former CFO at Atlassian. So that is my path to today with a whole bunch of fun stuff, kind of projects, programs, culture, values, all that kind of stuff mixed in between all of that.
Cool.
All right. Well,
Quizlet time?
It is quick Quizlet time. And Jeremy goes, we're trying something new this time. We'll see how this goes.
Make an announcement, man.
Yeah.
Where's your sound effects?
I don't have them set up. But yeah, we're going to be using Mentimeter today, scanning with this QR code, and you will be able to answer the quick Quizlet as we ask these questions to Phil.
You ready, Phil?
I'm ready. Let's rock.
All right, just giving people a few more seconds to scan the QR code.
Got it.
I see one person on there.
We got 12 of you on watching.
I'm going to go ahead and move forward with it then. All right, ideal vacation spot, mountain or beach?
And these are for you, Philip.
Oh, it depends. Mountains. I love the beach, but I love to ski, so mountains.
All right, mountains.
But you live close enough that you can do both.
That is a good point.
Little trip to Tahoe and then just right.
It is a unique part of the world in that regard.
Because I could do the same thing down here with Big Bear.
Yeah, that's true. Or a little further drive, you get Mammoth.
It's a much further drive. Yeah.
Well, fair enough. Better
right,
mountain.
It seems like our Jeremigos are split evenly, though.
Uh-oh.
All right, mobile operating system, iOS or Android?
iOS.
Hands down. Of course. I don't even understand why you put this as an option, Rodney.
Oh, well,
I'm evil.
We'll see what the tell says.
That one was Sean. That's all Sean. Sean's like logging in with every Android he has and just logging in.
You probably went back to rescan the QR code.
He's like, let me get all those Androids out of the drawer.
All right. Preferred messaging system, email or Slack?
Wait, hold up though. Sorry, Philip. Before you answer, so Sean likes Android, and he told me that the reason he likes Android because he hates Apple from a thing from like 1980 something that Apple did in the 80s to him, and he's holding a grudge still. Sorry, I would have let go of the grudge by now.
I don't have a choice. I have to say both. It's like I can't even pick. It's like my thing is like we need fewer messaging systems. That's my answer.
And we need fewer emails.
Well, one and the same, frankly.
All right, moving on. At what point does it stop being partly cloudy and start being partly sunny?
Oh, I love this question.
And this is as a percentage.
Oh, wow. Well, wait, a percentage of what?
Of how cloudy it is. 0 to 100.
Or why isn't it a percentage of how sunny it is?
I mean, it is that too, but...
Whatever you want it to be.
When does it stop? I guess when it gets to be 51% sunny, that's when it starts being 51. That's when
That's
it
so
starts.
high. I would have been like in the 20% range.
Interesting. Well, I live in a very foggy part of the world.
Yeah, that is very true.
All right. And who is the best billionaire philanthropist superhero?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I guess Batman, childhood affinity. He's more brute force, which I suppose is kind of how I find myself having to get a lot of shit done at Atlassian. Pardon my language there.
Don't worry, we're not monetized yet. I love Sean's answer though. When you have to squint your eye, that's when you're partly sunny.
Yeah, touche.
That's fair.
That is fair. Or when you have to throw your sunnies on, I guess.
And when I'm wearing my contacts, it's like if the sun's out, I have to wear my sunglasses. My eyes are really sensitive with my contacts in.
Yes, mine too. I can't actually wear my contacts during the week because they just dry out my eyes staring at the computer. Whether it's an hour, 6, doesn't matter. It's like if I have to do computer work, I just wear my glasses. It's much, much, much easier for me.
Yeah, been there. Know that one.
Mr. Phillip, we'll see you in a week or two.
That sounds great.
Yep.
Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. On my way out, I would just say, for anyone here live or watches this after, if you are genuinely interested, please do visit the website. It's not a plug for the sake of a plug. Like, there's a lot of really great information on there. You can also reach out to us at ventures@atlassian.com. And you can check it out at atlassian.com/ventures. So Rodney, Alex, Bob, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you guys today. I had a whole lot of fun. And I really look forward to potentially hearing from some people as a follow-up.
Thank you for being on, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome.
And you could drop if you have another call because we have a 30-minute outro.
Oh, okay. Then you.
Thank you for listening to the Jira Life. Our hosts are Alex, Dr. Jira Ortiz, and Rodney, the Jira Guy, Nissen. You can find Alex on YouTube at Apetech Tutorials, and Rodney's blog is found over at thejiraguy.com. Our producers are Robert King Bob Wen and Lena Ortiz. You can catch us live as we record this podcast every Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on YouTube at The Jira Life. Be sure to join us and our other Jira Amigos of the Peanut Gallery every week to ask your questions, let us know your comments, and just tell us what you're up to. But if you can't join us live, you can still catch the replay over on YouTube. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell while you're watching. We're also available as a podcast over on Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen to it and think it deserves a rating, we would very much appreciate it, as it will help others discover the Jira Life. Because we didn't choose the Jira Life. The Jira Life chose us.